77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.
The Rita Cosby Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Feisty, fearless, and fair. She's an Emmy-winning journalist from the White House to war zones, telling all sides of the story. This is the Rita Cosby Show. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, it is 11 o'clock right now in China in the morning, late morning there. And President Xi of China is meeting right now with President Trump in Beijing, and the stakes could not be higher. Just a little bit ago, we got the audio. This is of President Xi speaking via a translator because, of course, he was speaking in Chinese, and you can hear him talking about sort of this new era of a relationship between the U.S. and China and the respect that he has for President Trump. Here it is.
I always believe that our two countries have more common interests than differences. Success in one is an opportunity for the other. And a stable bilateral relationship is good for the world. China and the United States both stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. We should be partners, not rivals. We should help each other succeed and prosper together and find the right way for major countries to get along well with each other in the new era.
Interesting statement. Partners, not rivals. How do you realize that? Saying we should be working together. That would be amazing if that indeed turns out to be the case. But also remember, China can't keep stealing intellectual property. They're buying U.S. farmland near military facilities. There's been these biolab incidents. You've got these police stations set up, these Chinese ones in cities across the country like Minneapolis and New York City. And also, of course, weaponry going to Iran. Just recently, there was a ship full of illicit weapons that were going to Iran because of the very close relationship with China and Iran. And there are reports out there that China was essentially saying to the world, you don't have to follow these sanctions by the U.S. Just kind of keep getting the oil, keep buying whatever you want to get from Iran, sort of thumbing their nose. So obviously Xi talking out of both sides, but he certainly clearly respects President Trump. There is no doubt about it. President Trump got a grand entrance when he arrived just a few moments ago there in Beijing. It was really remarkable, extraordinary. Thousands of kids, also enormous military items on display. And of course, the stakes couldn't be higher given what's happening with the war with Iran and their very close ties to, of course, China. And here is President Trump because he responded to President Xi. And here's a little bit of what he said to the Chinese leader.
Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody. You're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth. Such respect for China, the job you've done.
And you could tell that there is obviously niceties on both sides. He understands Xi is out for Xi and China. And of course, President Trump is clearly out for America and U.S. interests. And here's a little bit more of what President Trump had to say to President Xi just literally about an hour ago.
People aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And very optimistic to hear that. and powerful language to hear from both sides, saying they hope it's a new beginning of relationship, that it blooms, that it's stronger. Both sides saying the right thing. The question is, what kind of deals can they reach? And what kind of impact can China also have on the war with Iran? Because they are extremely close to Iran. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go back to Thomas in New Jersey. And Thomas, we were talking with you about COVID, because that's another thing. Of course, the whole Wuhan lab deal. And boy, that was front row and center today at that hearing on Capitol Hill. But your thoughts about this moment here, and do you think even COVID's going to come up in the discussion? What do you think?
You know, Rita, okay, yeah, we can't get back to 7 million people that died from the Wuhan virus, but how about instead of phony reparations for slavery, how about reparations for the Wuhan virus? How about China pay us 2 or 3 trillion for that bioweapon that they launched and they shut down our economy? Businesses never recovered from that. The loss in productivity, the loss in GDP. How about Xi? He's such a great leader. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. Pay us. You want a partnership with us? Pay us for that, because his hands are pretty dirty on that. And Rita, you know, what about Taiwan? We're going to still protect Taiwan? My sister-in-law is from Taiwan. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. By the way, before you go forward, you just said your sister-in-law. And you know, also, you brought up COVID, Thomas, and you're right, 7 million people. And I think, what was it, like 1.1 or 1.2, I believe, million deaths in the United States. I mean, we still have gotten no answers from China on that. I don't expect that the Chinese leader is going to shed any light on that one. But we can certainly shed light on that, because everybody deserves to know the answers. Obviously, all the Americans who lost their lives, their family members. Think about the heartbreak. We all went through that. The world was shut down economically, physically, emotionally. I mean, there were so many horrible things that happened. And you got the old Wuhan lab, and again, with ties through NIH, through all these different groups, through these grants. We still haven't gotten a straight answer from Fauci on that one. But you brought up Taiwan, and I want to go back to that, because you said your sister-in-law. There are reports that, of course, China is going to try to get something out of it, even a softening of language from the president on it. And I agree. I don't think he should budge on any of that. What do you think?
Yeah, in their manifesto, they talk about world domination by 2050. These are large elephants in a room. And I guess, Trump is smart enough to figure all that out, Rita. But I mean, a partnership with China. How about the Strait of Hormuz? There are a lot of big issues out there. There's a lot of work to be done for President Trump there. And he schmoozes. He schmoozed with Mamdani also. And, they're not on the same page. They're not.
By the way, they're definitely not. But Trump knows that. It's interesting. I was watching comments from Marco Rubio on Air Force One on the way over there. And he was talking about how, he views them as adversaries, clearly. Different language than, of course, she does. But she, even outside of President Trump, views the U.S. as adversaries, too. There's no doubt about it. And Marco Rubio clearly going in wide-eyed about all the landmines and all the different issues surrounding China. And Trump knows that, too. Don't you think? I mean, Thomas, I give President Trump credit for talking to these people, because that's the only way that deals can be done and that peace could be made. I mean, remember, he famously was over there in North Korea. And remember, he went over there and he met with Little Rocket Man, Kim Jong-un, and took the time to say hello to him. They shook hands. They at least, and even on Vladimir Putin, I would love to see, obviously, that war ended by Putin against Ukraine. It's horrific what Russia has done. But I at least applaud President Trump for trying. He certainly has tried, and I'm sure he's continuing to try too, as we speak. But at least he's picking up the phone and he's getting them on the other phone. I mean, famously, who was it? Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin couldn't even get his Chinese counterpart on the phone for like a year and a half. He famously was like trying to get him, and he's like, I keep trying to call China and they haven't called me back. Well, if they don't call you back, how are you ever going to have any success? So there has to be some sort of a dialogue, some sort of a relationship. And in fact, I want to play, this is cut number 1. And this is back then. I want to walk everybody through, you, Thomas, and everyone else. This is 2021. Famously, when the foreign minister Wang scolded then our Secretary of State, Tony Blinken. It was the U.S. Secretary of State under Biden, a different world, but the U.S. Secretary of State, and also Jake Sullivan, who also was the National Security Advisor under Joe Biden. And remember the way they just dismissed them and scolded them? This happened in Alaska. Remember this?
我们认为你们会遵守基本的外交礼节。
Well, I think we thought too well of the United States. We thought that the U.S. side will follow the necessary diplomatic protocols.
所以我们刚才必须阐明我们的立场。
So for China, it was necessary that we make our position clear.
我现在讲一句，你们没有资格在中国的面前说你们从实力的地位出发同中国谈话。
So let me say here that in front of the Chinese side, the United States does not have the qualification to say that it wants to speak to China from a position of strength.
20年前、30年前，你们就没有这个地位讲这话，因为中国人是不吃这一套的。
Now, the U.S. side was not even qualified to say such things even 20 years or 30 years back, because this is not the way to deal with the Chinese people.
如果你们要跟我们好好的打交道，那么我们就相互尊重，打交道。
If the United States wants to deal properly with the Chinese side, then let's follow the necessary protocols and do things the right way.
So don't talk to us. Boy, did they talk down and dress down Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. Obviously, that was the translator there under Foreign Minister Wang. But he was totally saying, how dare you lecture us about human rights? This is while you got all this stuff going on with George Floyd and everything else. Don't talk to us about human rights. Look at your own country. Look at this. Look at that. Keep your mouth shut was the way. And they were like, I mean, what a contrast that is, Thomas, to the way that President Trump is clearly being at least shown respect. And clearly they are concerned about President Trump. That this is a man who has action and means what he says. And he's a straight shooter, too, which is why this meeting is so powerful. She wants something, but Trump clearly wants a lot, too. Right, Thomas? This is a whole different dynamic.
Oh, absolutely. He's like the Mike Tyson president after Tyson knocked out like all those fighters. This is President Trump. You know, they're shaking in their boots. They saw what we did in Venezuela. They saw the wipeout in Iran. This is, they're peace through strength. President Trump has demonstrated it. Ronald Reagan created it, and President Trump implemented it. But the art of the deal, pay us for the Bagram Air Base also, the reparations for the Wuhan virus and the Bagram Air Base, President Xi, and then maybe we can become associates. I'm not ready to say friends yet, Rita. Maybe associates. How about that?
Actually, that's a good line. I'm not sure about the friendship either. I don't know if we'll ever get there. And you certainly always want to kind of look over your shoulder. I consider friends people you vehemently trust and rely on, and I don't think that's ever going to be the case with China. But at least if we can get them to back off on their nefarious activities and do beneficial trade deals that are good for America, then I'm all for that associate relationship. I think that's a very good analogy, Thomas. Thomas, it's great talking to you, and let's pray for peace and pray for good results here. Thank you so much. And everybody, we're going to continue your calls after the break. A huge news night. President Trump and his associate, President Xi, meeting in Beijing right now. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And everybody, we will continue calls right after the break.
You're listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
The Rita Cosby Show, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is The Rita Cosby Show. Breaking news.
And Rudy Giuliani is back doing his podcast. So that is great news that he is back up and feeling much, much better. Apparently saying in this new statement, it's sort of the first, of course, since he was hospitalized earlier this month and very seriously with pneumonia, many respiratory problems too. Of course, a lot of it resulting from his time there at Ground Zero. And America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, revealing that he had, quote, very significant spiritual experiences while he was just recently battling that very serious case of pneumonia that caused him to actually slip into a coma in the hospital there in Florida. The good news is the mayor is doing better, thank goodness. And it sounds like he is on a good comeback, and we're so happy about that to hear. He is such a great man and was the best mayor ever of New York. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Robert in North Carolina on line 1. Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, Rita.
Hi there. What are you thinking?
Hello?
Yep. Hey there. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Hello?
yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Robert, I can't hear you. Maybe we're having some problem with the phones. Let's try another one. Let's go to Lee in Poughkeepsie on line 2. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, good evening, Rita, and thank you for your enthusiasm.
Thank you very much. So what are you thinking tonight, Lee?
Okay, well, I just wanted to say 1 or 2 sentences about the COVID and Fauci, but before that, just 2 sentences. I'm very leery of the Chinese, even with the expertise and the wherewithal that President Trump brings, because, first of all, they are not Judeo-Christian, so that's a problem unto themselves. So they don't think the way you and I think about business and stuff. And I'm just very concerned that, on the surface it could look beautiful, but what's cooking underneath, okay, that's number one.
By the way, I agree. There's sharks underneath. There's no question.
That's it. That's a good word. Thank you. But secondly, quickly, because several members of my family were very involved. And so I hope that your address is P.O. Box 17. I'm going to.
Yeah. You know what? You can make sure you can get it from our folks. You let us know. You keep us posted. You stay on there, Lee. Don't worry about it. But great to talk with you, Lee. And boy, there seems to be a lot of deep state stuff tonight. We're all ears.
The Rita Cosby Show, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Cosby is on.
Well, we should hear in a couple of hours what came out of this high-stakes meeting with President Trump and President Xi of China. They are meeting as we speak right now at the Temple of Heaven. After the meeting, that's where they're going to be going. They are now at the famous People's Hall right there, which is a very, very large structure. That particular one is about the size of 35 football fields in the United States. That is massive. And then after that meeting there, that's sort of the diplomatic location of the president of China. Then they will go to the Temple of Heaven afterwards, this beautiful, breathtaking structure with massive steps climbing up. And it will certainly be an epic moment just to see that. And obviously to see what comes out of this meeting, too, because right now there is no sort of bilateral discussion planned. In other words, no press conference with both of the leaders making statements. That was planned intentionally. Sometimes, though, these things change just because it's not on the record books. Maybe they decide to do something and go out and speak together to the media. There are massive throngs of media covering every step of this visit. Many American media members going, but also from all over the globe. You could see it is absolutely swarmed with media because this truly is a historic moment. But no scheduled press conference or scheduled statements from them scheduled to happen at this time. Of course, anything can change, but it's expected that if that holds true, then the only way we're going to find out is what President Trump says has happened after the meeting. And then you'll hear from Xi through his media what happened after the meeting. And you have to see if they're the same messages. And what the real story is, because, even if Xi hands over the farm, which I'm not saying he's going to, that will not happen. But even if he surrenders certain things to President Trump in a deal, you could bet he would spin it very differently for his own people. So it's going to be very fascinating to see what messages come out in the media after this meeting and what President Trump reveals. And if China reveals anything, if at all, or in what spin they put on it. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. We were also talking about the undermining that has been happening by so many members on the Democratic side. And of course, a lot of the big talk tonight is about Iran. There is no doubt about it. What is China doing with Iran? What are they doing covertly, clearly? Some of it pretty much out in the open because the U.S. stopped a ship not that long ago that had a lot of Chinese weapons bound for Iran. And earlier today on Katz and Cosby, we talked with Gordon Chang. And I want to play, this is cut number 3 of Gordon Chang describing the role of China and Iran and why this meeting right now with Trump and President Xi could not be more timely. Take a listen.
Well, that's certainly been the case because China has been supplying Iran with arms before the war and also during the war, in all probability, because we saw those Chinese military transport planes arriving in Iran after turning off their transponders. Military transports usually bring military equipment. And we know that this is important equipment because at the third week of March, the Iranians announced that they had launched cruise missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln. President Trump said 101 anti-ship cruise missiles were launched. Iran doesn't make anti-ship cruise missiles. Iran, however, does have Chinese CM-302 anti-ship cruise missiles. So, yeah, they've been doing that.
That is a very powerful statement. So, in other words, Gordon is connecting these anti-ship cruise missiles that Iran has been using directly to China. And, of course, as I mentioned, even the United States announced that they had stopped a ship full of illicit weapons that China was sending to Iran. And that was like, maybe 2-3 weeks ago? It wasn't that long ago. So what is China doing? What is the Chinese leader doing covertly? And what is he going to say to President Trump? Well, President Trump, President Trump, he'll be courteous. One of you guys brought up the analogy about Mondani. Here's Mondani, who couldn't be more diametrically opposed than President Trump, but yet he greeted him at the Oval Office. He said, "Oh, you seem like a nice guy. I wish you luck. I like your smile. We want to agree on X. We want to agree on this. We want to agree on this, but I hope you do well for New York, and I hope you do well for America. And if you do good things, then I'll support you. And if you don't, we'll have other discussions." So I sort of see the same sort of strategy on a bigger level by far with President Xi, saying, look, we can all get along. We can bring peace to the world. We can end this, conflict with Iran. You can convince them to give up their nuclear materials. You can also try to formulate maybe some sort of regime change and put the right people in power there. That'll be good for the world. It'll be good for you. You'll continue getting oil. We will have world peace. They won't threaten their neighbors anymore. You could see the deal. And if you don't do this, then, we'll have to do certain things. And I hope you understand. And sorry, but that's the way it's going to have to be. So I can see it looked like when President Trump was saying very courteously to him when he came in at the meeting. I was watching the body language, and I've known President Trump a long time. You could see it in his face. He was obviously being courteous and showing the respect that China wants to see. They're in China. He's greeting a world leader. So he treated him with the respect and said, you're a great leader, meaning for your country. I respect that. I'm here for my country. You got to respect that too. But he also had his game face on, and I mean it like his fight face. And you could see Marco Rubio was laser focused because he's got a lot on his plate. And all of the individual folks that are there, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was also there at the table, you could see that they have their list of major things that they have to do. And they know that this meeting will be a lot of back and forth, high stakes, and that big things are on the table, that this is a very important meeting. You didn't see anybody sort of sitting back, resting on their laurels. You could tell that they had all been up all night thinking about these different meetings and understanding how important this moment truly is. And here's a little bit more from Gordon Chang. We talked with him earlier, as I mentioned, on Katz and Cosby, and he had some suggestions of what the President Trump, should do vis-a-vis Iran.
It could have been anything, Rita. We don't know from reporting, but we do know that clearly it was military equipment. President Trump threatened to impose an additional 50% tariff on the goods from any country that continued to sell Iran military equipment. I think the president needs to actually impose that tariff, because if he doesn't, the Chinese are going to think his warnings are hollow. This is going to cause consternation. The Beijing is going to be enraged. But remember, we're talking about putting the lives of American servicemen and women at risk. We have the means to stop this, and we don't do it. I think it's important for us to be as good as our word.
Very powerful statement from Gordon Chang, who understands Asia and understands the dynamics all too well. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania on line 2. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Hey, good evening, Rita. Actually, I want to send best wishes to Norm. I hope he's doing all right.
Yeah, but I'm so glad you brought that up, because we were talking about him the other night. I hope he's doing better. I hope, Norm, if you're listening, or someone who's checked on Norm, give us an update, because we adore Norm. And he wasn't feeling well, right? It was a cold. It wasn't an accident or anything, right?
I don't actually remember what it was, but I know that there was concern about himself.
Yeah, so thank you, Joaquin. So, yeah, let's hopefully we get a good update from our favorite Norman soon.
But, I have a totally different twist on this whole COVID thing, the release of from Wuhan. Under the first Trump administration, this goes to the deep state in this country that really has an anti-American agenda. The whole Russia collusion thing didn't work to take Donald Trump out the first time around, okay? And there were people on the Republicans didn't stop it either in the Republican deep state. And the Trump economy, everything was going so well in the first 2 years of his administration. And I believe that, they deliberately had to stop him. And being that Wuhan actually was funded, I believe, under the Obama administration and maybe others by the United States, I believe that really, quite frankly, that was released in conjunction with the Chinese. That this is much deeper than just China reaching on the wall.
Wait. So, Joaquin, you think that the U.S. somehow played a role in this?
I believe that there are people in this country that played a role in it. Because if you look at Wuhan, I found it online. This is a while ago, so I'm going off the top of my head, but we actually funded that Wuhan lab. So
yeah, we did, and it was through a couple different sort of surrogate different groups, and it was through NIH grants. And one thing that's always bothered me, and Peter Navarro said this to us on the air, so I'm not talking out of school. He shared this on air with us, that all the times that Fauci was in meetings with President Trump, because remember, Peter Navarro handled a lot of the PPE, a lot of the masks and all those things that, remember, we're all over there in China too. Remember, we had a shortage here of masks and all the things we needed when COVID hit. And he was telling us, I remember him saying that in meetings with Fauci then, because of course he was there at the time and Trump won, and President Trump and Peter Navarro, when they had meetings about do we have enough masks? Do we have enough this for doctors at that point and nurses when, the pandemic was breaking? And not once, he said, did Fauci ever talk about any NIH money tied to Wuhan lab. Not once did he bring up any connection to the Wuhan lab. That to me is the biggest red flag of all. Now that we look back, and Fauci, there were allegations. There was a referral by Congress that he had lied to Congress about that NIH grant. But Joaquin, how could that be so? That, you know that some of your money from NIH grants that you agreed to went to a couple of these different locations that ultimately ended up in this Wuhan lab. He was aware of it. And yet it was like he never even mentioned the lab. Remember, he was so set on that wet market that an orangutan met up with a kangaroo and then got crossed with a zebra and a rat and then somehow ended up getting, the Wuhan virus, COVID from a wet market. And yet there was this lab that was right down the street, and he never once put a connection that he was even aware of this lab or that there might have been any U.S. funds or world funds that were tied to it. That's a disgrace. To me, my opinion, I don't believe Fauci. That's my opinion. I think there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. I'm not sure if it goes to what you're suggesting that the U.S. somehow had involved, but boy, it is really, really fishy. And Joaquin, I want to play this. I want to continue with you, so stay with us. I want to play this again because this was blockbuster today when the CI operations officer, this whistleblower, James Erdman III, he is an active CIA officer right now. And he was subpoenaed to testify before Congress, before a Senate committee. They did not want him to testify, the CIA. And they put out a statement afterwards, which we'll get to in a moment. But here is James Erdman testifying. And boy, what he said today was blockbuster. Listen to this.
Thank you for the complimentary introduction. And I appreciate the committee's dedication to transparency and accountability. I am a career CIA operations officer, and as you mentioned, I was on joint duty assignment at the Office of Director National Intelligence Directors Initiatives Group, or the DIG, between March 2025 and April 2026. I was responsible for leading the DIG's investigation into COVID origins, anomalous health incidents, and unidentified anomalous phenomena. I'm here today to discuss the COVID cover-up, the national security implications associated with the DIG's investigative findings, and CIA refusal to comply with lawful oversight, as well as how we remedy these problems. Intelligence community leaders and senior analysts downplayed the possibility that the COVID pandemic originated as a result of a lab incident. Motives are difficult to define given the scope of the DIG's review. Intentional or not, the IC's actions resulted in a cover-up, wasted resources, and a failure to properly inform policymakers. Public health policy would have been very different had the American public been made aware that a virus from a lab in China was going to serve as the foundation for an emergency use authorization mRNA products being mandated by the former administration. Dr. Fauci's role in the cover-up was intentional. Dr. Fauci influenced the analytical process and findings by leveraging his position to ensure the IC consulted with a conflicted list of curated subject matter experts, public health officials, and scientists. This included some of the authors of the paper, The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2, and other public health experts who have been in his orbit for the last 20 plus years. Some of the scientists were part of the Biological Sciences Experts Group.
It's interesting. Here he is pointing the finger. And by the way, the CIA came out with a statement afterwards, Joaquin, saying this proceeding is political theater. They did not want him to testify. Why is the current CIA covering that up, Joaquin?
Well, that's the whole point that I'm trying to get to, because if you go back to the first Trump administration, and personally, I remember the first 2 years, I did so well at work with the raises and the money I got during the first administration. And when you look at how everybody tried to shut Trump down with the Russia collusion and all the conspiracies against him, and the only way to stop him effectively was really this COVID virus that was released. And as you listen to this gentleman testify, that almost kind of backs up what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is. You're right. I mean, there is something, there's some maybe deep state going on here. I'm not sure if I'm going to go as far as you do when you talk about us playing a role. But clearly there's a lot more to China than meets the eye on this one. And boy, the timing of this hearing today with President Trump now meeting with Xi as we speak couldn't be more interesting. Let's put it that way. Joaquin, thank you very much. Really great to talk with you. And Norm, we do hope you feel better. And everybody will continue your calls after the break. But first, support our heroes.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
And this is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment, with a very powerful story from Sand Springs, Oklahoma, where a 98-year-old Army veteran was honored for his service during the Korean War. Army veteran Jim Metcalf was presented the Ambassador for Peace Medal from the Korean government. This medal, by the way, serves as a token of appreciation for his tireless service, sacrifices, and the unending contributions, not just of him, but of 6.8 million American men and women who served worldwide during that time, and were 38,424 Americans died. And we can never thank them enough and their families for their incredible service for freedom. And everybody, America's heroes need your help. Support them, support the military, and also first responder heroes. Donate just $11 a month to the incredible Tunnel to Towers Foundation. They are the best out there, and it just takes $11 a month. Check them out at t2t.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
You're listening to The Rita Cosby Show. The Rita Cosby Show, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And in a matter of hours, we'll find out maybe if history has been made in Beijing. President Trump meeting with President Xi, and we'll get a readout hopefully in a few hours. But they're meeting right now because it's morning, almost noon there in China. Let's go to Pete real quick in Staten Island. Line 4, Pete, go ahead.
I'm going to be real quick. Okay, first of all, Donald Trump is the art of the game, and it's exactly going great. And I want to give a shout-out to Norman and Big Tony Anthony, who's recovering. He was on a respirator a week ago. And Giuliani, same thing.
Well, I'm glad you brought up all of them, and let's pray that all of them do better. 3 great guys, and I trust in Trump, you guys, when it comes to China.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?